Welcome back to the podcast. Oh gosh, dear listener, we're going to be talking about a heavy topic that either is going to hit right at you and go, "Ooh, I do that," or you're going to be like, "I know somebody who does that, and that bothers me." So today I've got Karina Daves, and we're going to be talking about how to stop parenting your partner. Welcome to the Balance Code Podcast, a place for high achievers to step outside the hamster wheel of day-to-day life and start learning tools for more balance. I'm your host, Katie Russler, and I will be guiding you on this journey of discovering your balance code. Karina, welcome to the Balance Code Podcast. I have a feeling this is going to be a great episode.
Me too, Katie. Thank you for having me. And amigos, my name is Karina F. Daves. I am a relationship expert, a speaker, and the podcast host of Relationships You Understand. And I help you overcome the number one conflict in your relationship so that you can have your life back and some peace as well.
Yes. I love that. No, where are you located? I know you're state-based. Where are you located?
So I am in Dirty Jersey. That's where I'm at.
Yes. For those of you who don't understand, just look it up. It's just a dynamic that you can never explain, but it's real.
Yes.
So, Dirty Jersey, excellent. Karina, let's dive into how does this dynamic happen where partners start parenting each other? How does that
Yeah.
occur?
So I think it really starts in many different forms. I've seen it with my female clients that are super independent before they even get a partner, right? And so they've had this journey where they have been their own private problem solvers. They've never really had a lot of support. And so their way is the right way and their way is quicker. And not in the sense that everybody else sucks, but more so that that is just the habit that they've created. And so even though there is such a deep desire to want to be with their lifetime partner, there still is this programming inside of them that they fix everything. And then that fix turns into control, or somehow I call it your caring turns into control because you love this person a lot, but then it just becomes controlling and parenting. And then I would say there's the other part where there is a very big sense of trust. So it's lack of trust, excuse me. So it's not so much that you're programmed that way, but so much that you don't have a lot of trust in your or confidence in your particular partner. And so you don't allow the ball to ever drop. And you don't realize that because you don't allow the ball to drop, your partner will never actually pick up on any of the habits that you wish that they did have. And I know we'll get into this later, but those are the two types of people that I've seen how they become people who parent their partners.
I love that you pointed out like it's that kind of hyper independence. I can do it. Fine, I'll do it. Oh, you need it to be fixed. I can do it. And then that starts to turn into the parenting.
Hmm.
And so let's bring it in, the nagging.
Hmm.
How does that get formulated into all of this? When I work with couples, I was like, but it's the nagging. It's like you're just nagging me. And I'm like, mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So the nagging, where do you see that coming from?
I see it in two aspects. So one partner, the one that feels like they're being nagged at, it feels like you don't trust me, feels like why are you reminding me? And the partner that is nagging is like, I'm just checking on my mental to-do list. Like I don't mean necessarily to nag you. This is just something that's on my mind. And until it's completed, I'm just going to keep asking about it. Whereas what I've worked with a lot of my clients on is like, how can you come off or how can you communicate in a way that seems more like you're partnering about this together rather than like I'm holding on to this very thing and I'm the parent in the relationship, like we're no longer a team, but more so like I'm checking up on you as like this is your to-do list and I gave you something to do and you haven't done it yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I find when the nagging starts to happen, ultimately the crossed arms occur and the pissed off teenager comes into the room and you're just like, oh God, it's like
Hmm.
adding to the dynamic.
Yeah.
But it's so ingrained in us, this
Hmm.
pattern, right? As soon as we feel this nagging or this fixing or things like that, the other partner retreats into like a very younger way of
Yeah.
acting and mindset, and then it just
Hmm.
feeds the cycle. What are ways you help people break this cycle? Like, how do we really stop parenting our partner, especially if the dynamic is so ingrained in us as a couple, say we've been
Mhm,
together 7, 10, 15, 20 years, that
mhm.
it's like, well, how do we stop that? It's like just how we are.
Sure. So I have a couple of ways. One is that I like for my clients to take accountability for their part. And where I've seen a lot of my clients really start to have a sense of clarity is that they've created a very much false sense of urgency. So getting back to your question before, is that nagging is sometimes and most of the time rooted in creating this false sense of urgency. Like this has to happen right now
Yep.
because you're going through the Rolodex of items in your mind of what needs to get done. And so once you can sort of divorce yourself from that false sense of urgency and understand that like this is just something we have to do and it may not be something that has to happen right now, and I get it. There probably are things that have to happen right now, but not everything does. Then that can sort of really ease our nervous system in a way where we don't show up in that nagging spirit, but perhaps like, hey, I'm just checking in. Did you call the DMV about that one thing? There's a big difference between that heart posture and the heart posture of like, did you do it yet? Like, they're just too yeah. I wish y'all could see Katie's face. There's
It's like
just 2 different, like, ways of asking things.
yeah,
So I think 1 is definitely accountability for the false sense of urgency. I think 2, and I know a lot of my clients hate this, but I need you to start letting the ball fumble. Seriously, letting the
absolutely.
ball
Yes.
fumble will create so much magic in your relationship. It is unbelievable because when you don't allow your partner to fumble the ball, you are robbing them of the opportunity to create the very habits that you want them to have. And if you just keep fixing everything, they'll never really create that. And it really takes a team. And then, third, I would say is what my husband and I always talk about is like having flexibility for all of it and the rainy days. Like, I think plenty of us in the last 2, 3 years have really much heard the word grace, having grace, having grace. And people are like, I'm tired of giving so much grace. And I'm like, all right, well, then just be flexible. Okay. just
Right.
be a, yeah, just be a little bit flexible with the
Yeah.
plan. So I am a planner and my husband may not have been when we got together. And I realized that the plan was just a way to keep the boat moving,
Mhm.
but in the house moving per se. But if somebody woke up sick or somebody, we forgot something that needed to happen that we didn't get done, the plan is in place to help support the family moving, but we can still be flexible, and it's in that flexibility that you create that grace.
Yeah, definitely. So the first point you brought up is very much about your own personal anxiety and that need for the to-do list to like get knocked off as fast as possible. And especially when we
Mhm,
can delegate it, right? Like
mhm,
this is yours to do. You should have it done already. And it's like, well, they have their own schedule and things. And like,
mhm,
I love how
mhm.
you said like it really coming with like, hey, I just want to check in is much more peaceful than like, did you do that thing? Because when I hear, did you get that done? I'm like, oh, God, well,
Yeah,
hold on,
yeah,
wait, you know,
yeah, yeah, and if I ask you, Katie, like, "Oh, Katie, did you call the DMV?" That tone, it
yeah.
it opens up for your partner to even apologize, to be like, "Oh, my bad, like, I'm so sorry, let me write it down or get it done now." Like, it leaves room for that.
Right, right, absolutely. And I love that you brought up in the second point, our partners can only learn from, I like to call it failing forward, right? Like from, oh, I dropped the ball, I made the mistake, I waited till the last minute, and then feel that pressure and have to fix it. And for you not to rescue, for you
Mhm,
not to just be like, ah, I know how that feels, right? To show him grace in that way, right?
mhm.
Compassion, but not fix it, not go, okay, well, it's fine, I'll just do it.
Yeah,
Like, that's the only way we do learn, all of us, right?
so
And so the
sad.
more times that the ball drops, the more lessons we learn, the higher chance that in the future we won't follow that pattern. I don't know if
Mhm,
you see that too, but I see with
mhm,
me and my partner
mhm,
that, sometimes it takes one big ball dropping where you're like, yeah,
mhm.
next time I'm gonna pay attention. Like that wasn't about him trying to nag me about it. That was actually important. That was something
Yeah.
we really needed to get done. But
Mhm,
we have to have that feeling because if you've had the trampoline, right, or the safety net always underneath you,
mhm.
you don't think like, well, okay, well, if this doesn't work out, then like she's got it or he's got it. Like I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, 1,000%. And I just want to add one more thing with a quick story is that also flexibility with the way that your partner does things. Your partner is not going to pack the way that you pack. They're not going to talk the way that you talk, but they will get it done. So when I transitioned into my tech job 2 years ago, I handed over the management of the finances to my husband. So we always did all of our money together and paid our bills together, but the managing, like who went in to click the bills was me, to pay the bills was me, excuse me. And I like just did not believe in auto pay. I was very old school. And so my husband was like, listen, I will take over. I totally understand. Like now you're getting to this position. You need more mental capacity. If you can just walk me through, how to pay all this stuff, give me a Google Doc and I will make sure it happens. And I'm like, okay, sure. So the first month passes by and I remember seeing like emails like payment due soon. And I'm like, Karina, don't you dare.
Mhm.
Don't you dare. And I wouldn't say anything, right? The next month passed by and I'm like, honey, like, there's no like red tape around the house or anything. I'm like, how's everything going with the bills? He's like, it's fine. I just put everything on auto pay. And I'm like, what? And he's like, yeah, I don't know why you didn't think of that before. He's like, you just got to make sure there's enough money in the bank. And I'm like, okay. And I'm like, and you feel good about that? And he's like, yeah, like you don't really got to think about anything. You just gotta know your overall numbers, and he's like, "And then we save a certain percentage, and, like, I feel good." And he goes, "You know what?" I'm like, "What?" He goes, "I called a couple places, and I got us discounts because if you're on auto pay, you get 10% off here, you get 15% off here." And I'm like, "You do?" And he's like, "Yeah, I spoke to a couple customer reps," and I was like, "Wow, I'm really happy that
Okay.
you did that." And I think, like, that was one of the biggest things that I really let go of, and this is a good story of me describing the way I would handle the bills versus how my husband handled the bills, but at the end of the day, the bills got paid.
Hey there. I wanted to take a moment to interrupt this interview to share with you a resource I have for you. Do you find that you and your partner struggle to set goals together? No, I'm not talking about cleaning out the garage or finally filing taxes, but to actually set goals about your relationship. Well, I have the couples goal setting workbook just for you and your partner to help you start getting more focused on building your relationship rather than getting the to do list items off of your household tasks. So, check down in the show notes for the couples goal setting workbook and make sure you take some time out in the coming weeks to use it and start to build a stronger relationship together through setting goals that you're both excited about. Yeah. And what you just said was, I built trust with my spouse to be able to get the job done. It's just
Exactly.
going to look different. Like, but
Mhm.
the trust is there now that, like, oh, actually, I wouldn't have thought to call the places and be like, "Hey, like, can we discount here or there?" Like, I would have been
Yeah.
like, online auto pay, done,
Yeah,
done. But like,
exactly.
oh, if you talk to them, okay, everybody, go call your places and ask.
He's such a hustler, honestly, Katie, he's such a hustler. I'm like, "I would've never thought of that." He's like, "Yeah, it's, like, everywhere all over the website." I'm like, "Never read it."
Never would have read. I would have been like, "Pay, done,
"Hey,
next."
done." Yep.
But he just was like, "I'm gonna work smarter, not harder,"
Yeah.
and just showed all of us like, where should I be asking these questions? And then lastly, you brought up grace or flexibility. And frankly, all of us who use the word grace, we're like, yeah, flexibility is what we've been meaning the whole time. Like, with yourself. It is so hard to be flexible and adaptable when
Yeah.
we desire to control things. And as high achievers who are overwhelmed, we constantly feel like, right? Like you're holding the rag doll and shaking it.
Mhm.
So we're going to break that down a little bit further. What would be some things you would talk to a spouse who's like, I really have a hard time being flexible, like watching the email come through and being like, and
Mhm.
not saying anything.
Yeah.
What are some things that you could replace that with or help them, give them some tools to like calm their nervous system as they learn to be flexible of packing the last minute if that's how your partner does it versus the week before, right? Like,
Mhm.
how do you
Mhm.
sit with that?
I think it's really asking yourself, like, why are you inflexible? Like, where does that come from? Instead of trying to change your partner or trying to change you, like, you can still go nutty inside. Like, I'm not asking you to change your mindset about it. I'm asking you to first focus on the way that you treat your partner because essentially, like, you are going crazy and nutty inside, like, "I just want this to happen now," and I get you, but I think it's also rooted in asking yourself, "Why? Why is this so urgent? Why is this so important?" Like, are you anxious about this? Even going back to, like, your own story that you know your best about yourself, right? Is this rooted in a situation where you didn't have your hands on something for once and it all went, on fire or down the hill or whatever? And is it rooted in that? And are you placing that same exact fear or that same exact sentiment on your partner, which is completely unnecessary? And I think processing through that in those moments can help rather than blaming it on your partner. Because I think when we think too much about the partner and their dynamic, especially in these scenarios, it's very quick to blame. And I don't want that for you.
Yeah. So let's say someone's listening right now and they're like, I need to have this conversation with my partner, whether because they're doing it or you're actually finally taking ownership, whichever. How do you have that type of conversation of like, hey, I want this dynamic to change? Or is it worth a conversation, like saying, let's not talk about it, let's just put it into action? What advice would you give a couple?
I always say that when your partner takes accountability and talks to you about it, like out loud, it changes the temperature of the relationship. Like an I'm sorry or, my bad, a sincere in that way really changes the dynamic. So I would honestly challenge you to have a conversation for comprehension, not a conversation in circles for 2, 3 hours and you're bringing up things from the past for like decades. That's not what I'm asking you to have. It's a simple, like, hey, I've been thinking that perhaps I set up such a false sense of urgency for things that are really not that urgent. And I'm going to work on it. I'm gonna work on it because I've realized how much it's impacted us, and I need to trust you more. And I want to spend the next season of our relationship really building trust within each other because we're adults. If we could pay a mortgage and have children or whatever the case is, have these careers, like I have to be able to trust you and you have to be able to trust me. So that's my part. And I really want to work more as a team rather than constantly being the fixer. I know that if I just let things fumble or allow more space for you to be present, then you'll actually be creative. And I'm robbing you of the opportunity to be creative about solutions for our partnership. And I'm sorry about that. I want to work as a team.
I forgive you, Karina. I'm in. I'm all in. Let's do this. You had me. Hello, I've got this. Hearing you say that, it's so good because often we kind of need a script, right? And maybe you go back, listener, and
Mhm.
listen to this and to go, okay, how can I say this? But one thing I want to point out, because the point of view you gave was the person who is doing the parenting on the spouse. If you've been doing that, you've broken emotional trust with your spouse because they feel like, oh, it's like always an attack. It's always negative. It's always pointing out what I did wrong. So when you come with that, it's going to be a beautiful gift of healing because it'll be like,
Mhm.
whoa,
So good.
this feels different.
Yeah. Yeah, you're
So
right.
see that, know that you're building that trust around their emotions
Mhm.
and hold that as a sacred thing because it's very easy for us to slide back into like being as negative as possible instead of like, wow, I see I've been hurting you by doing this, and you've been
Mhm.
hurting me, and it's just this ongoing cycle. And if you're on the opposite end, let's say you're the spouse who's being nagged, you might want to be like, hey, listen to this episode. We should talk about it together later. There's a really great script that Karina gives of what to say. No, but I think coming and going, hey, I recognize I probably create urgency in your life by not doing things on your timeline. But, I have my own timeline. And
Yeah.
I do get things done, so let's work on this. Like, that's the way you can do it on the opposite end. There are ways to have these conversations, and I agree with you. It does change the temperature
Yeah.
when you talk about
1,000%.
it because
1,000%.
you're just the other person just constantly waiting for the ball to drop
Mhm.
instead of, "Oh, I know now to expect because 'cause we've talked about it. This is the shift
Yeah.
happening."
You know what
And
also helps, Katie? One more
yeah,
thing. I think we also, if we're the one that is parenting our spouse, what I also offer is I'm not saying that everybody does this, but to also refrain from talking crap about your partner to other people. I do not entertain those conversations. Like, when people are like, yeah, like my husband can barely go grocery shopping and like doesn't even know, what day this is for like I don't entertain those conversations because what it does is it continues to jade my perspective and my point of view of my partner. And if I'm trying to have a better relationship and I'm trying to see them in a better light, I can't do that. So that is for me like a big boundary. Like I just don't talk crap about my partner in a negative way. If I have something to say, I go straight to the source. I go to him and I'm like, "Hey, listen, I don't like that you did that." I've always been real about that.
Yeah, our words hold so much power. And you're right. If you're speaking so negatively, your brain's then processing anything around them in that same light. So I
Mhm.
love that you brought that up. That's a great tip and a good reminder. Karina, people want to connect with you. They want to
Mhm.
find you. If they want to be like in your space, listening to what you do. You mentioned podcasts. Share again.
Mhm.
Where are you? How can
Yes.
they chat with you?
Okay, so I primarily live on Instagram and TikTok. My handle is Karina F as in Frank Daves. If you go on TikTok, just don't entertain the comments because they're a little bit spicier on TikTok. Or you can go to
Yes.
my website, KarinaFDays.com. If you feel like this is a season of your life where you want to work on resolving the number one conflict in your relationship so that you can have more peace and get home and be happy and actually enjoy the fruits of your labor, then definitely book a call with me so we can talk about everything that's happened, what you tried, and how I can help. You can also listen to my podcast at Relationships You Understand on all platforms that you listen to your podcast. So that's me.
Well, excellent. I'll make sure all the links are in the show notes so people can connect with you. And I really appreciate your time and sharing with
Yeah.
us. I feel like we like pack this with a lot of meat
Yeah.
for people to chew on. So like
Yeah.
go
We're the same
listen,
person.
replay, replay, play it again, send it to a friend or two, maybe a family member. And I know that there's going to be some good nuggets of wisdom that come out of this each time you listen to it. So Karina, thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so grateful to have this conversation, but also to help my clients who are listening right now, who I
Yeah.
know are working on these issues as well. So thank you on their behalf as well. And dear listener, here's to finding our balance code. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Take a moment to leave a rating and a review on your favorite podcast platform. That helps other listeners just like you to find this podcast too. Want to connect and learn how we can work together? Check out the links in the show notes below. Discovering your balance code doesn't have to be a one person journey. You can have a team, and I'd love to support you. So, here's to finding our balance code.